Are you listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any other platform where you can leave a rate or review? Do you like what we're doing? If the answer to all of that is yes, please consider quickly giving us a 5-star rate. And if you wouldn't mind leaving us a nice review, we greatly appreciate that as well. Okay, let's do this.
Hello, welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
And there's no Jenny today. Boom. So, but anyway, thank you for joining us for episode 272 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we'll be discussing the prologue to A Dance with Dragons.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. Unless, of course, you have a Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer tier that includes spoilers, then we are going to spoil things for you. But regardless, hopefully we'll provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and other things of interest in this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing all right, trying to stay warm. Much of the country is in a really cold spell. My dad, he lives in Florida. He sent a picture somewhere out of his place, and there was snow all over the ground.
Wow.
So
one of my team lives in the beach here, and they said they had 6 inches of snow, which is just unheard of for the beach.
Goodness, that really is unheard of. Yeah. We had a sustainer call last night, as we'll mention in news and notes, and you mentioned that Carson had popped her head into your room there and said it was snowing, and by the time I got upstairs and was able to do anything about it, there was already a layer starting to take on my driveway. And I did manage to get a car up onto the road because I have a slopey driveway. Yeah. So we need to get a car up there or else we're locked in for a while. I got up there, but I think I was cutting it pretty close.
Yeah. It was a winter wonderland by the time the call was over. It was beautiful.
Yes, it was.
So I have a slightly funny story for you. So let's see if you find this funny. I find it very amusing, and it's ongoing amusement. So we're in the second half of January now. Believe me, because of dry January, I am counting the days. I know exactly what day we are.
January is a long year.
Yes. So all of our holiday decorations are taken down by this point, with one exception. We have on our fridge a Christmas card from our optician, our ophthalmologist.
Okay.
And it's not a personal thing. It's obviously like, he prints off 7,000 of these and sends out to all his clients.
Right.
He's kind of good looking, and he's got a very attractive wife and 2 very cute kids as well. So this thing has adorned our fridge now for 2 months, and whenever I go to the fridge, the magnet that holds the picture on the fridge has been positioned so that you can't see the wife or kids. You can
just coincidentally. Purely coincidence.
So I adjust that so you can just see the wife, and every time I go back, it's moved again. So Carson and I have this silent battle over this picture.
Right. I wonder how long it'll be there. Wonder if we'll be having an episode in July and you'll be talking about this Christmas card.
It's tickling us both to have it there, so it may stick around.
Yeah. We had our decorations down before the new year. You know how Stacy rolls. Yeah. It was, let's see, Christmas was on a Wednesday this year. It was, everything was gone. You would have had no idea that Christmas had just happened by Saturday or Sunday.
Wow. And you have so much Christmas spirit, you can't contain it inside of 1 month?
It's just one of those things. I just have to, I don't have a choice. I'll walk into the living room and she'll have a box and decorate, and ornaments will be going into the box without any consultation from me. So,
but honey, it's Christmas morning.
Right. As each kid opens a present, an ornament comes down.
Wow, that's harsh. I mean, I have a sort of caricature vision of Stacy in my mind, and it kind of fits with that, but it seems
right.
a little harsh even for her, to be honest. You know.
Yeah, but we all know it's coming, so it doesn't faze me when I walk in. I get a little annoyed because I'd like them at least to have stayed up through the new year, you know?
Especially because you work hard on your Christmas decorations. Like, you do 10 times as
Right.
much as I do.
Yeah, so a lot of effort and time goes into them, which is why we usually put them up right around Thanksgiving, you know?
Right, yeah.
But this year, because Thanksgiving was so late, we did it a week before Thanksgiving.
Oh, wow.
So, they were up for a good 5+ weeks, So
the other thing I was going to mention, actually, I read a very interesting article this week about the Billion Club for Spotify.
Oh.
Have you heard of this?
No, are we in it?
No, we're not. So this is songs that have had 1 billion downloads on Spotify, and there's
we're just short.
Just short, yeah. We're any minute now, and it was. I mean, you know I'm old, right? And you know I'm out of touch. You know these things about me, yeah.
No more out of touch than I am, but slightly older. So yes,
the list was incredible. So there's only 800 songs on this list, so I didn't expect to know them all. But I thought, given that these are the most downloaded songs on Spotify, I would be aware of them.
Right? Yeah.
Have heard of the artist.
I'm with you. I know where you're going. Yes.
It was amazing. It was like, who are these people? I've never heard of them.
You taught me to do a holiday time trivia game for and I've been doing it every year for like the past 15 years at our this Christmas dinner we have with this group of friends that we used to live by. And this year I was looking through Spotify stats to try and come up with some questions. Other than Taylor Swift was about the only name that I recognized, and I don't know any of the songs.
So I'll ask you a few trivia questions, and maybe I'll answer these later on in the podcast and see if you can think about it in the meantime.
All right.
Who has the most billion download songs? You may already know that one.
I would guess Taylor Swift.
No, that is not correct. So I'll let you think about that one. And okay. I've got two
more. I won't know
but
anybody else. Is it someone I've even ever heard of?
I believe you would have heard of this person because I had heard of this one. No, I couldn't have hummed along to any of their songs, but I had heard of them. So I'll ask you two more from our generation. Which two songs from the 20th century have had the most downloads on Spotify? Okay.
Oh, wow.
I have to think about that one.
Yeah.
And the other one is, which band from the 1960s has the most billion download songs?
Wow.
All right.
60s.
You be thinking about those.
Okay.
You be thinking about those.
Band. Okay.
All right. Well, I'll give you the answers in news and notes, okay?
All right. I like this. Good idea. Okay. Yeah. I don't know that I'll have much time to think about it, but
no, of course not. Believe me, thinking about it won't help with any of these, I promise.
I'm sure I would get them wrong regardless.
What I want you to practice in the meantime is your what face, because that'll come in handy.
I'll work on that.
All right, well, let's get down to business. How did we leave Varamyr Sixskins? Or as I like to call him, who? Last we saw of Varamyr Sixskins, he was taking part in the battle beneath the wall. His eagle, for he is known as Sixskins because of his ability to warg multiple animals, suddenly burst into flames, and he, Varamyr, not the eagle, screamed and was heard of no more. Well, until today. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
All right. Well, the warg wolf Stalker smells a group of 2 men and a woman holding a baby. Wolves fear men, but wargs don't. He gives a low growl and the pack rallies to him. The wolves attack the men first, then the woman and babe. They make short work of it, too. Stalker is sure to leave the pup for One Eye, the alpha. Leagues away, Varamyr Sixskins stirs. He tastes blood and fat in his mouth, but unfortunately, his belly is empty. It tastes good, but Varamyr knows that he's sunk pretty low when human flesh tastes good. His mentor Hagen had always warned him that such desire was an abomination, which Varamyr thinks was Hagen's favorite word.
Hagen had a hierarchy of abominations for a warg, from eating human flesh to mating to warging into a person, the worst of all. Varamyr recalls Hagen as weak, He learned much from him, but the last was the taste of human flesh, as Varamyr stole Hagen's wolf and then ate the older man's heart through the wolf. Varamyr is not well. He huddles by a fire that is mostly smoke in a hut. He is badly wounded down his left side. A woman, Thistle, has stitched it up, but had warned him that he needed to rest to avoid reopening it. He feels it seeping again.
They're just two now. Other companions have departed. He regrets not invading them while they were all together. His body is dying, but he could live on in another. The wildling army is scattered to the winds. With Mance gone, dead, or captured, they were leaderless and lost. Thistle asks where the other leaders are, including Varamyr, clearly not knowing who he is. He calls himself Hagon. He chose the name Varamyr for himself and earned the Sixskins by his deeds, but now he was craven.
He'd picked up the wound after the battle when he'd seen a dead woman in a squirrel skin cloak. As he tried to take it, a child had jumped on him and stabbed him with a bone knife. Thoughts of his previous deaths fill him. His first when he was only 6, the most recent when his eagle burst into flames. They all hurt, but the last one had driven him temporarily mad, and he'd lost control of his wargs. His snow bear had rampaged and killed many. His shadow cat fled. The fire in the hut has gone out, and there is no sign of Thistle. He realizes that he missed his chance to take her over.
He thinks back to his childhood. His dogs killed his younger brother, Bump. His father killed all the dogs, the last one while Lump, which was Varamyr's original name, was within. His scream confirmed the truth, and the child was given to Hagen to be with his own kind. They were right. Hagen, whose gifts were no match to Varamyr's, had taught him much. Varamyr had promised that he would be king beyond the wall one day, and he had been pretty close. However, in hindsight, he should have never followed Mance. Before that, he'd been a lord. He had a hall attended by his animals, the local villages paid him tithes and homage, and he took any woman he wanted.
Now fear takes him outside. Snow has buried the hut, and there is no sign of Thistle. He hears his wolves, the only animals he didn't lose in the battle. They'll eat his flesh when he dies, and he's strangely comforted by this. If Thistle would just come back, he could take her. He'd probably lose the gift and be forced to live out his days as a warty woman, but he'd live. The fever drives him to his knees. He eats some snow. He then uses a stick as a crutch, but the stick breaks and he falls for the final time.
His blood reddens the snow. He won't see the lands south of the wall. He dreamed of them, although Hagen had warned that his kind were hunted down there. He decides to take over one of the wolves and begin his second life. Hagen believes that the animal would eventually forget that he was once a man. Varamyr knows this to be at least partially true from Aurel's eagle. At first, Aurel's presence was so strong that Varamyr found himself hating Jon Snow as much as Aurel did. When he saw Jon and Ghost for the first time, he knew them to be warged. Jon was strong but untrained.
He's overlooked by a weirwood tree and tries to excuse his crimes to the gods. They don't seem to listen. Then he's woken by Thistle screaming, "They're coming! Hundreds of them!" Without thinking, he takes her. She's resisted far more than even the snow bear did. She thrashes and fights. They fight within her, but she turns her nails on herself to drive him out, clawing at her own eyes. She bites off her own tongue. He dissociates, seeing from every living thing around. True death comes, and he is one with one eye, the wolf. Through the wolf, he sees others walk between the huts. The wolves know that these are not prey and watch them go. The last one is Thistle. She looks at one eye with her blue eyes, and the wolf knows that she knows who he is.
All right. We're off and running.
Yes. Feels like a whole new thing happening here.
Yeah.
It is always interesting. The prologues and epilogues are always interesting because you get the perspective of someone who you otherwise wouldn't, sort of
right.
a background character. And
yeah,
I like this one because it gives us sort of like quite a bit of insight into the sort of customs and mores of a people. In this case, the wildlings and their attitudes towards wargs.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, there's clearly respect for them in the society, but they're shunned directly by their kith and kin. I think according to Varamyr, it took one day for him to be thrown out of his family at the age of 6 after he...
Right. Yeah. I think some of that had to do with the fact that his dad probably thought that he killed his younger brother through the dogs? Maybe?
Oh, that's a good point. Right. Yes, the dogs were accused of, the reason that the father killed the dogs was that the dogs were accused of killing Bump, which seemed to be true. They certainly ate part of him. And then there's the question. You wouldn't think Lump did it until Lump screams when you kill one of the dogs, thus indicating to you that he was warged into the dog, and then suddenly Bump, being the favourite, getting killed by the dogs looks a lot less innocent.
Yes, and there is a line when Lump, who's Varamyr as a boy, is thinking back about what the Woods Witch said to Lump and Bump's mother when Bump died, and she says basically he's gone back into the earth, and he'll always be with you and all that, that kind of stuff. And Lump thinks Bump can see me, he's watching me, he knows what I did, which leads you to believe that he did something. And some of the details of his backstory, which is rather tragic, is he was pretty sickly, and no one expected him to live. He didn't even get named until he was 4, and by then the name Lump had stuck. But his younger brother, much like Sam and Dickon, his younger brother was strong and healthy, and they planned on naming him their father's name, and so there might have been some jealousy, and I wonder if the parents had an idea that Lump seemed to dislike Bump, and therefore had an inkling that maybe he was involved in this death.
Right, that basted him in peanut butter or something like that to get the dogs to kill. But
right.
Then it turned out he had a secret way of doing it. What's very interesting, actually, is the sort of the mirror parallel between that and what happens with Thistle. Because what he believes from what the Woods Witch said is that although Bump wouldn't have known at the time that it was his brother doing it, that it was, presumably when you get attacked by dogs and killed, you think it's the dogs.
Right. Yes, especially when you're 2.
Right. Yes, exactly. but you're right. Varamyr Lump thinks he knows what I did. In death, he has an awareness of the truth and can see through it. Jump forward to Thistle. She's killed by Varamyr for sure, but she locks eyes with one eye, or eye with one eye, and knows who it is. So again, he can't hide his true self from the dead, it seems.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I see the comparison. Yeah. What you're saying about how in this prologue we're learning more about the wildlings and about how wargs are treated in the wildling society. We also discover that there's almost a warg community within the wildling community, complete with conventions of sorts and gatherings of skin changers where they exchange ideas and discoveries, and there's breakout sessions on each abomination rule and things of that nature.
Hagen chairing.
Right.
Yeah, and also I suppose that's the flip side of them. You're right. I just assumed he was turfed out because he was a warg, but you're right. He might have been turfed out so rapidly because he was a warg who possibly had murdered his little brother.
Yes.
But anyway, if this is something that does happen to young wargs, that they get sent to sort of apprentice with adult wargs, it does mean that you have this sort of a guild of wargs who are sort of fostering each other's talent, teaching each other the ropes. In Hagen's case, teaching each other the boundaries as well. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it didn't take very well with Varamyr because he seems like a pretty awful guy. We get some background on him as an adult and some of the things he would do, like send his shadow cat into the villages to find women to rape. And, we alluded to it in the summary. He basically stole Hagen, his mentor's wolf, and then prevented Hagen from getting to the second life that he was so looking forward to by kicking him out of his warged wolf, and then, to add insult to injury, threw the wolf Varamyr ate Hagen.
Yes.
So not a pretty awful person.
Yeah. So I had a question. I've jotted it in the notes here that Hagen had these prohibitions for Lump. Do you think that they were real prohibitions, or was he making them up as he began to realize how powerful Varamyr was going to turn out to be? That is, an ordinary warg might not even try to take over a person, or if they did, they would be instantly rebuffed, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
But he could see that Varamyr was going to be powerful and wanted to put these prohibitions in place to prevent him from trying something that he might succeed at.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very possible because, as a full-grown warg who is mentoring a child, you would probably realize the power that this one has.
Right,
and
right.
Also, based on what we know about Lump/Varamyr, realize he doesn't have the greatest moral compass, possibly. And so I need to try and keep him on the straight and narrow with these really strict rules.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a great start to, sort of like the hero's journey for Lump is not awesome. When it starts with, as a 6-year-old, murder your 2-year-old brother, then get killed by an axe by your father unwittingly.
Right, yeah.
And then get turfed out of your home all in the space of a week. And it's like, that's going to leave some mental scars, I feel, that whole thing.
Yes, and that very well may be all that trauma at such a young age, maybe what sent him down the road of,
But trauma part A was his evil deed.
Yes, right. I mean, yeah, absolutely. He's 6. Maybe it was an impulse that he didn't, think through.
Good point. Good point.
But all that trauma may have been what led to him being he didn't have the opportunity of getting any type of therapeutic resolutions that would help him resolve that stuff. So maybe
interesting
that's what
to
led
talk
him
to
be
the
a bad
animals
person.
about it. I've had a rough life. The snow bear's just like, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill you. You're not really helping, Snowy.
Snowy. But I think Hagen's rules are pretty reasonable. Don't eat humans. Don't have sex while you're warged into an animal. And don't control humans. I mean, those are rules you'd want to institute pretty much universally, I could see.
Yeah, I suppose so. But I mean, you'd be curious about the first two.
Right, sure. Yeah. There'd be a curiosity, yeah.
The third one, sure. Maybe that's the one that he created just for Varamyr, just to say, please don't do that.
Right, that's a bad
idea. You're going to hurt someone, possibly yourself,
You know who is doing that, though, is our young Brandon Stark. He's warging into Hodor.
Oh, that's
on
right.
more and more frequent basis, at least last we saw them.
Interesting.
And he's young, so he might not understand the level of violation that is. And he's only got Jojen training him, and Jojen doesn't know that Bran is warging into Hodor at this point. I believe.
Hodor can't express the violation he feels. And so Brandon's not getting that feedback either. Interesting.
Yes. And, again, back to the strength thing, the strength of your warging capabilities, we believe that Bran's a pretty strong warg. He, the Three-Eyed Crow is seeking Bran out, and so you'd think maybe he's got some really good warging strength.
Yeah. And on the subject of Bran, actually, one of the things that Hagen said struck me as interesting. He had warned Varamyr, realizing he's dying, he's never going to see south of the wall, thinks about the fact that Hagen told him that his kind was hunted south of the wall, that if they ever went south of the wall, they'd be hunted down. And I was like, is that true? It feels like the Northerners might not be quite so averse to magic of the old gods. I mean, that feels like old god magic right there. And they would tend to embrace that. And Bran is an example. I mean, Bran clearly, with Summer, was showing exhibiting some of it, and nobody raised a word of concern.
I would think that in the North, it would be the most tolerated
accepted
from the rest of the
yeah.
kingdoms. But I feel like maybe in a Bran chapter it was kind of alluded. You know, Bran was really defensive when Jojen started probing about his wolf dreams. And that's when Summer and Shaggy attacked the Reeds, and Hodor had to, you know, shoo them away. So I feel like maybe it was kind of alluded to, but I can't recall a specific instance. I do know that there were certainly rumors through the Riverlands that Robb and Greywind were warged, and that rumor was spreading, and I don't recall any Stark supporters being too bothered by the idea.
Yeah.
So
again, I often wonder if Hagen is just making stuff up, because I mean, how would he know anyway? You know, that could just be an old wives' tale passed down, you know, at the conventions of wargs.
Right.
It's this kind of rumor that spreads and sort of like sticks. Interesting.
Yeah. So, you know, back to Varamyr. Clearly, he is a very powerful warg. I don't know how many other... We don't know a ton of other wargs. I mean, there's several Stark kids that seem to have some warg tendencies, but Varamyr's warging 6 animals at a time. And the fact that he can keep the snow bear under control, because he mentions how much the snow bear hates him and hates when he is inside of her. Sorry, the snow bear is a she. When he is inside of her, it just goes to show you he's able to keep that bear under some level of control all the time, unless he lets her run free and then brings her back. But it seems like she's around, you know. So
that is an interesting point, because he definitely has some sort of like latent hold over them, and that's the most impressive part, because like you said, we've had the evidence of people warging into individuals, you know, Bran with Summer and then Bran with Hodor, but sequentially, not at the same time. And here's Varamyr sort of like spinning plates, keeping 6 of them.
Yes.
And some of them, it seems like the wolves, for instance, they see him as pack members, and so when he lost his mind here at the battle, they stuck around. But the snow bear is just waiting for one instant to kill him.
And that one instant came when Melisandre burned the eagle. Remember, Jon killed a warg named Orell when he met Ygritte. Orell was a warg with an eagle, and then Varamyr took over that eagle. And Varamyr says, he tells us in this chapter, that Orell, his essence, remained in the eagle. And when Varamyr took over the eagle, he could feel the presence of Orell and the hatred for Jon, so much so that Varamyr began to hate Jon. Varamyr didn't have any particular reason to hate Jon, but because of his influence from Orell, he was hating Jon. But while he was in the eagle is when Melisandre burned the eagle up at the battle beneath the wall, and that death, when the eagle was burned up, caused Varamyr to really fall apart, and he was writhing on the ground, and that was the snap that both the Shadowcat and the bear were waiting for, and they took the opportunity, and the bear went berserk and was killing people left and right, and then fled, I assume. And then the Shadowcat fled as well. Yeah. So,
which also proves that he didn't have like a fallback mechanism of having them chained, or anything like that. The instant he was out of commission, they were loose and free to do whatever they want.
Right.
It's surprising in some ways the snow bear didn't get him. I think maybe he just sort of fell over and she missed him in the melee,
Maybe. Yeah.
So Thistle complains that the leaders of the wildling army have gone AWOL. To be fair to Varamyr, he has a decent excuse. I mean, having been burned to death and having lost some of his, sort of cycles during that time of having been burned to death and losing your marbles. But as a result of the vacuum of leadership, the whole crew is lost and confused. And basically, in sort of like retelling, he tells how the group that he and Thistle were part of dwindled as various groups said, let's go to here. That's a good place to go for the winter. And none of them sound like very good ideas. But
right.
That's the thing. This great big army, which isn't really an army, it's a people, is dispirited and dispersing in a very haphazard way. And there are bad things out there, as we find out by the end of this chapter.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the wildling army was basically is just in total chaos in the wake of Mance's capture and the wildlings' defeat, and it's very clear that the army was held together only by Mance's will. And Thistle kind of gives an update to us, telling, kind of griping to Varamyr of where the wildling leaders are, or where at least where they're believed to be. We don't know a lot of whether she's accurate on some of these. She says that Mance has been captured. We do know that is true. Yes. He's captive at Castle Black. We know this early in the Sam chapters in A Feast for Crows before he leaves the wall.
Harma Dogshead is dead, and we believe that to be true as well because we saw her die in the battle beneath the wall. True.
Yes. Yeah. Thistle says that Tormund, Weeper, and Varamyr Sixskins have run off, which, so according to A Feast for Crows appendix, which this isn't a spoiler because it was in the appendix of the last book.
I agree.
So, Tormund is currently leading a group of wildlings who fled. And it seems that maybe they're just separated from the group that Thistle and Varamyr are part of, and not necessarily, running for the hills.
That could almost be said of Varamyr too, that he's leading a group who fled from the battle.
Right.
Just him and Thistle, it turns out.
Yeah.
And Weeper led a fight at the Bridge of Skulls by the Shadow Tower, was defeated but retreated alive.
And remember, that rider came through the camp that Thistle and Varamyr were in and said, hey, we're gathering warriors by the bridge to take the Shadow Tower under Weeper. So,
right, okay. So yeah, there's not a lot of abandonment there. There's captured dead, forging a new path as best we can. The other two,
right?
The only one who's truly AWOL is the one she's talking to.
Right. It's really it's sad that the rank and file are left holding the bag when the king is lost. It reminds me of when Septon Maribald said that it's dangerous being common-born when the lords play their Game of Thrones. And apparently that's true north of the wall as well, because now these people are really in a bad place.
I will say, though, if Tormund has got a group and Weeper has got a group, they actually might be better off splitting up and trying their luck in different ways.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know that one big force is going to be big enough to do anything at this point.
Right, exactly.
Anyway.
It failed once, and it's easily tracked. If you split up into sort of like smaller guerrilla groups and try at various points, that is actually going to give the Night's Watch a harder time. We know that. We knew that before the first battle.
True. Yeah, well, Varamyr thinks that, I like the way he worded it, that the survivors escaped the knights, Knights, Stannis' knights, but now a more relentless enemy stalks them. And you immediately think, being that they're north of the wall, that he's referring to the others, which we see is true at the end of the chapter. Mm-hmm. But I think in that moment he was meaning starvation, exposure, and their own kind, other wildlings.
All of these things are coming for them.
Yes. Yeah. And, Varamyr thinks that all the free folk and the Night's Watch are doomed because the real enemy is coming. And, we know it's why Mance was so hell-bent on getting south of the wall. And then to punctuate the point, whites and others overrun this little settlement that Varamyr's dying in at the end of the chapter.
Yeah. I'll say it's good of Thistle to look after Varamyr. She doesn't know him or owe him anything. And in a battle for survival, an injured mouth to feed is likely a death sentence for both of you.
Right.
And as it turns out, it certainly was for Thistle.
Not for the reasons she thought it would be.
Do you think that at full strength, Varamyr would have taken her over? Or do you think that Hagen was right? The attempt was always doomed to fail?
I think he probably would have been successful at full strength.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have a lot to go off of. We can compare Bran and Hodor, but it's not really apples to apples because, Hodor seems to have some mental deficiencies that we don't believe that Thistle has. So I don't, it's hard to know whether, since Bran could do it, that means that Varamyr could do it because, it's not an even match there. But I think if he was fully healthy, I think he would have likely been able to do it.
Yeah.
Personal opinion, anyway.
We learned a hierarchy for walking with various animals, and apparently dogs are the easiest. And I think he points out that that's because they live closest to the humans. They're already partly human. Then the wolves are the best of the wild beasts. Animals of prey, like elk and deer, they turn the warg into a coward if the warg stays in there too long. Right. Birds' ability to fly is intoxicating, but Hagen warned against it because you can feel that real life is mundane after you've flown too much.
Yes, although Oral and Varamyr seem to handle that eagle okay, or at least so it appeared.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, Varamyr's attention has to be so split that he probably doesn't even get a chance to look at the view.
That's true. But then he being Hagen, talks about this second life that a warg gets after the human life ends.
Well, can get, I think, is the idea. Right?
Yes, I mean, not guaranteed.
Yeah.
Obviously, Hagen didn't get it because he only had one animal that he had warged, and Varamyr stole that animal.
Out of, yeah.
Yes, but apparently it's a simpler, sweeter life, and that eventually the animal that the human wargs into, day by day, will begin to forget that they were ever once a human until they're just fully animal. So, and when Varamyr was in the eagle, he felt Oral's presence there. So apparently Oral was still living his second life with some memory of his human life. And the fact that he hated Jon, maybe that was the only thing left.
Yeah.
But
we'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
So, and that legacy feeling is an interesting facet. It sort of, because of it, Varamyr was aware of Jon.
Yes.
Probably didn't even know who he was until he took over Oral's eagle. But then, so because he's aware of Jon, he recognizes that Jon is a warg. Now, does Jon know he's a warg? As I recall, this was a test of my recall. I do recall that he intentionally tried to look through Ghost's eyes when they were up the milk water or whatever it was called, looking for the...
They were in the Frostfangs.
The Frostfangs, when they were looking for the wildlings' encampment. He was definitely intentionally doing it there.
Well,
and that feels like warging,
he fell asleep. Right? He fell asleep and saw the wildling army through Ghost's eyes.
Trying to do it.
When he woke up and told the Rangers what he had found, they said, "Dude, you're a warg," and he wasn't quite sure what to do with that at that moment, but. I think it's the last Jon chapter in a Storm of Swords. Stannis says, "I have heard that you are a warg," along with a bunch of other facts about Jon. And Jon says, "I have a wolf. I had a wolf. I had to leave him on the other side of the wall. I don't even know where he is now." So he's not quite sure that he is a warg per se. He just has this connection with Ghost, but he has seen through Ghost's eyes and saw the army of the wildlings. So it's complicated a little bit, I guess.
Yeah. So you and I wrote different notes on the battle between Thistle and Varamyr, but we ended up with your interpretation, which I believe was correct with hindsight. But the problem is that there's a sort of like confusion between first and second person here, because
yes,
when Thistle attacks his eyes, they're already in her head. So
yes, there's a lot of things like his mouth, her hands, his face. So when Thistle comes, like we said in the summary, Thistle comes, wakes him up to warn him that there's others in the village, and he immediately tries to take her body. And yeah, it gets very confusing. As I understand it, Varamyr's body lies limp after Varamyr tries to take Thistle, and the entire fight afterward is done inside of her body, the whole struggle. He's fighting for control, and so he's considering her body his body. So there's a lot of cute, confusing dialogue, like her teeth snap together, his mouth filled with blood,
Right.
She raised her hands to his face. He tried to push them down. They wouldn't obey, clawing at his eyes. But then later, when he's kind of floating through the forest, he sees her as a mad woman weeping red tears.
Yeah.
So it certainly seems like she bit off her own tongue and she scratched her own eyes out.
Yeah. I agreed. Once you'd explain what you thought, I agree with you.
When he is kind of floating through the forest and he's a little bit of everything, he's the werewood and he's the owl and he's the hare and all that stuff. One thing he sees as he's kind of moving toward One Eye, which is his ultimate destination, he sees a great elk, and the great elk trumpeted, and it unsettled the children clinging to his back. And I thought, what children? Are we talking about children of the forest? Because there's also a direwolf that he sees, which is also very thought to have been extinct until the Stark direwolves. So the children clinging to the back of the great elk.
Remind me, Mackelly, for I believe you know the answer to this, given what you're saying. Which members of Bran's party went beneath the wall and came out the other side?
Hodor, Bran, Mira, Jojen.
And they were going to see somebody who had an elk, right?
Oh, Cold Hands.
Cold Hands.
Oh, it could be
Could they be the children
Bran
riding
party.
the elk?
He never mentioned a giant man saying Hodor, but aside from that, well, that's a good idea. Yeah. It's very vague. I mean, children, there's not a lot of children riding on elks.
When you said it, I thought children of the forest just like you, but then I was like, well, literally, we do know of an elk and a children connection, so...
Yes, very possible. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that connection. I like it.
So the last sentence, let's call this Mackelly's law. That the last sentence is always meaningful. Are we to take it that the whites aren't just mindless zombies, but have some memory and some insight? Thistle has a grudge against Varamyr. Well-founded grudge. I'm not blaming her. Yeah.
For sure.
And knows that he's hiding inside One Eye. So is this a sign that there's a little bit of agency to these otherwise shambling zombies?
Yeah. Would she know that Varamyr is in the wolf?
Well, that's what I took the last sentence to mean, because he said she sees him. That's what it says. She sees me, is what Varamyr actually says. So I took that to mean that she is looking at One Eye, but she's seeing Varamyr.
Yeah. Yeah, that's possible. It would... How she would know that Varamyr is now in that wolf if she didn't know that he was Varamyr Sixskins from the beginning. Maybe she put it together real quick when he jumped into her body.
Right. That's what I'm thinking. She still doesn't know it's Varamyr. She just knows it's someone capable of jumping out of their own body into someone else's. And she was
Yes.
able to track it because of the connection that they had now, because he'd been inside her mind. Maybe. But anyway,
Yeah.
the whole point is, are the whites more than just animated corpses? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. The last sentence is vague, but also has a lot of
Yeah, she
interpretation.
sees the wolf. Yeah, absolutely. She's looking at the wolf. I get it.
Right.
But
Yeah, the mundane answer could be that she's not dead. She is now,
yeah,
capable of seeing things because a minute ago she was dead.
but she sees me. She sees
me. Yes, right. Not just she sees, she lives, something like that. Or not lives, but she's animated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why did George Martin kick off Dance with Dragons with this one? I mean, to me, this feels way less consequential than like Crescent's chapter.
Right.
Interesting, not bad, but not as consequential.
Well, I think, there's some things that we're going to need. I think it's setting up things that we're going to need to know in A Dance with Dragons, or at least be reminded about. The dangers of Bran working Hodor, the hardships north of the wall. We see the increasing threat of the others, aided significantly, possibly, by the death from the defeat by the Night's Watch and by Stannis. We're just adding to the ranks of the others' whites here. Yeah. And I'll get more specific in spoilers, but we just need, I think it's setting us up to, here's some rules, here's some structure that will help you in this book. And Varamyr dies like all the other prologue characters, main characters, died. Sir Waymar and Will both died in the prologue to A Game of Thrones. Garrett survived, but then he was beheaded the next chapter by Ned.
Not every character in the prologue dies.
Right.
But the focus character tends to die. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because Crescent died in the prologue to A Clash of Kings. Chet dies in the prologue to A Storm of Swords. Pate, we thought, died in the prologue to A Feast for Crows, but then he popped up at the very last few paragraphs of A Feast for Crows. And now here, Varamyr dies, at least his first death.
Yeah, I'm curious to go and read the epilogue now to see if One Eye buys it in the epilogue. Yes, it seems like it's a bad thing to be as a prologue POV.
Yeah, for sure.
You've got about 20 pages left, my friend.
Merritt didn't make it through the epilogue of A Storm of Swords.
That's right. All right, thanks for that. What about some spoilers? And remember, if you join us at the upper tiers of the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainers, you can enjoy the spoilers. All right. Well, thank you for the spoilers.
Absolutely.
How about some background?
All right, well, so this prologue focuses on the skin changer Varamyr Sixskins, obviously, and we know that Varamyr is a very powerful skin changer. Even early in life, he realized he was more powerful than his mentor, Hagen. And he tells us that he thought Jon was a powerful warg, but not as powerful as Varamyr. Now, this could be some self-aggrandizing. We have no way of knowing just how powerful Varamyr was, but he did have 6 skins, so, he's got that going for him. And he's dead now, so I guess we'll never know. But we have been told that the greatest skin changers of all were the green seers of the Children of the Forest. Jojen told Bran that they could wear the skin of any beast. So, and speaking of Jon and his warging skills, and Bran as well, Bran actually probably more directly, the Stark Kings of Winter actually went to battle with at least 2 powerful skin changers during their rule of the North. One such skin changer was named Gavin Greywolf. The fight between the Starks and Gavin was known as the War of the Wolves. Obviously, Gavin, Greywolf. The direwolf is the sigil of House Stark. The Starks not only killed Gavin, but also all of his kin, which is a bit of a trend here, because another powerful warg that the Stark kings faced was the Warg King, who took up Sea Dragon Point on the west coast of the North as his seat. But the Warg King had powerful allies in the Children of the Forest. However, like with Gavin Greywolf, the Starks defeated the Warg King along with all of his allies and their green seers and all of his family as well. So just wiping them out.
Interesting. All right, well, thanks for that. Comparison with the television show, without rewatching every second, I can't absolutely be sure that this didn't happen. But a search for Varamyr in the wiki of Westeros got me 0 hits, so I'm concluding this just didn't really happen. So I'm calling it at this point.
I like it. I'll stand by it.
Pedantry corner. Yes, pedantry corner. I've got one, which is if I was 6 and my little brother had just died, and my dad axed my dogs to death in front of me, I might scream uncontrollably, not because I am a warg, but because I'm a 6-year-old.
Yes. I guess it would depend on where you are. If you're there to witness it, it certainly would stand to reason you might scream uncontrollably. If you were somewhere that you didn't know was happening and you started screaming, I guess.
Yeah, but I am, even in saying that, I am forgetting the suspicion that he might have been involved. That's the one piece.
Yeah, we did discuss that. Yeah.
All right, news and notes. We had a really fun Sustainer call yesterday. We had a great time.
Yeah.
It wasn't a very large group, but we enjoyed everybody's company.
Absolutely.
Only Derek recognized the subtext that we were just grifting for investors. And it was awesome to meet Andrew, who seemed like a very nice guy.
Yeah, it was a really fun time. It's always a fun time.
It was,
but that was...
it is. I find them a little stressful going in, but then they're really fun when we get chatting.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to them.
So answers to the questions. All right. So which artist has the most billion songs?
I have no idea.
The Weeknd.
Oh, I have heard of him. Yes.
I told you.
I couldn't tell you a single song, but I've heard of him.
I tested Lucas, and he got all 12 of his billion songs.
Really? He has 12 songs that have had 1 billion downloads.
I believe so. Yeah. He has the most billion songs. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I wouldn't have thought that either. I mean, I would have come up with his name eventually, but probably like 20th on the list. I too would have started with Taylor Swift, but she's not anywhere near that apparently. The 2 20th century songs with the most downloads from Spotify?
Couldn't tell you.
It's very hard. But one actually makes a bit of sense. Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Makes a bit of sense, yeah. But the other one to me makes a much less sense. It seems very strange to me. Every Breath You Take by The Police.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Really? That's exactly how I feel. Really?
I would have never, I could have guessed for 2 years I would have never hit that song.
I'm the same. That one is strange to me. So, the 60s band with 3 billion songs?
I couldn't even begin to guess what.
You could guess the 60s band. Come on, guess the 60s band.
Well, like 60s and 70s kind of overlap. Would Led Zeppelin be 60s and 70s or only 70s?
I think Led Zeppelin only have one. This band has 3.
Earth, Wind and Fire.
No.
That's more of a 70s, not 60s.
I thought you might guess the Beatles. Or the
Beatles. Yeah, of course. Yes.
Right. But you'd be wrong to guess those. That's why I'm telling you those.
I was thinking American rock bands. I wasn't thinking yeah.
How American.
I know, right? Could that sounded more American?
The answer is Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Oh, yes.
But that seems so strange. I mean, compare their oeuvre to the Beatles.
Right.
And somehow they've got 3 billion songs. The Beatles only have 1.
That is shocking that the Beatles only have 1. I should have guessed the Beatles right off. I mean, the Beatles should have been my first choice. Then I would have been wrong, but that would have been the right choice to make.
So yeah, and seriously, just a bunch of artists that I had never even heard of. There's one called XXX Tentacion.
Okay.
He's got like 7 or something.
I don't even know what you said.
Exactly. I don't know how to say it. I'm just like, I'm regurgitating. The article I read said there's at least 2 artists that look like a login password.
Yeah, now that makes sense. That's a good one.
So let's conclude this one.
All right.
So whites hold a grudge, is what I'm concluding. And
maybe.
One eye better watch his back. Better get someone with two eyes behind him.
Yeah, and the chaos from the battle beneath the wall is basically equals a bonanza for the others for, just the creation of their whites army. Right,
for sure. Especially because they're so fragmented. It's small groups that they can easily pick off and convert.
Yeah. It's just adding to the ranks in huge numbers. And, you think about it, the Night's Watch won the battle, but possibly made the future war that much harder when what we assume will be them having to fight the others at some point.
Yeah. Confirmation that Jon and Ghost are a warg pair, but Varamyr reckons they're not as powerful as himself. Does that hint that Jon might be able to warg into other animals? Could he have, sort of like got into the snow bear and set him off before Varamyr lost his mind?
Right.
Wresting control there.
Yeah, Varamyr thinks that Jon is fighting his gift rather than embracing it. And that's probably true. I don't think Jon wants to acknowledge that he has this gift. If he ever chose to embrace it, he could probably do similar things to what Bran's capable of. Bran maybe is stronger overall, but then, the point of the prologue, we didn't see much warging in A Feast for Crows. We were focused on characters that didn't have that capability. To my knowledge, I can't think of anyone. I don't think we had any warging type characters in A Feast for Crows. So it just reminds us. It just reminds us it exists. These supernatural concepts are there, and we may see them here coming up in A Dance with Dragons, and provide some structure and rules to the concept of warging, and shows that it's more than just the Stark kids are capable of it, that there's a whole community north of the wall that can do this sort of thing.
True enough. Up next, we have a Tyrion Lannister chapter. How long has that been? We've had a year with no Tyrion.
That name sounds really familiar. How do I know that guy?
Tall guy, long blonde hair.
It'll be exciting to see what he's been up to for the past year while we have been focusing elsewhere.
There's 3 ways that you can help us. You could leave us a positive review. You could buy a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhal. There you can join us at any of the various sustainer levels. There's a tier to match your budget and interest. The upper tiers get you the spoilers. Or you can make a donation directly to our cause at our website, ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com.
And hey, before I say my bit here, I just want to mention that if you didn't listen all the way through last week's episode till the exit music ended, you missed out on a really fun little surprise there. So I would say if you hadn't done that, go back and listen through the music.
I haven't listened, so now I'm nervous. I'm going to go listen.
Well, you know what it is at least.
I don't. I've completely forgotten.
Oh my goodness, did you really?
Yeah, I have no idea. I'm going to have to go listen.
You'll remember when you get there. Anyway, if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, well, first off, you can send us a text. The link is at the top of every episode's show notes. We enjoy getting them. Just keep in mind we can't reply. And if you're interested in keeping up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, well, I suggest you check us out on our social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal, Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.